Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Joe Theodore, and thank you for clicking on the video, stopping by today. Today, we will have a chat about Saturn returns. Now, I haven't talked about a Saturn return ever on the channel. I'm preparing to do my next retrograde class on Saturn retrogrades. So I'm kind of just getting myself in this Saturn mode and thought to myself, you know what? You haven't really talked about Saturn returns at all. And you really honestly haven't talked about Saturn, because Saturn is so important in our life. And the greatest teacher, aside from Jupiter is the guru. Jupiter is the spiritual master, the philosopher, the abundant one that brings us insight, that expands things, brings us optimism and hope. Any good guru in a classical sense provides us with optimism and hope and maybe a spiritual sense, or someone maybe in your life, or you may come into some knowledge that makes you take on a Jupiterian role. So wherever Jupiter is in your chart, it could be, some kind of knowledge and wisdom in that area of your life that is beneficial, to something outside of you. Or it could just be that you're absorbing knowledge in that house topic, and it's just very, psycho-spiritual, as I like to say, But Saturn is not a guru. It is not your friendly neighborhood spiritual teacher or, philosophy teacher at school that's really trying to inspire you, in a new way of thinking. Saturn is more like a drill sergeant. Saturn is more like the structures of society and the disciplines that keep us in a box. But usually those boxes are necessary in order for us to have a chance of potentially even breaking free of the box. But as human beings, we need structure, organization, we need authority, as much as people don't like hearing that, because we are wild animals, aside from the spiritual essence of human beings, we are wild creatures who are surviving here. And as we've intellectually matured and evolved as human beings, we have grown to understand the necessity of ethics and morals, which are really how we structure society so we can behave ourselves. So if we really want to get sociological here, if we really want to get philosophical here, ethical and moral, from a philosophical sense, Saturn is the rule maker. Saturn is the one who sets the record straight, who tells you if you're on the right path or not, will reveal to you new options potentially, will remind you that patience is key, will remind you that you need to work hard if you want something in life. It will delay you, which is why if Saturn's ever retrograde, there's a double delay sometimes in that part of your life. Things just seem to slow down or get harder, right? So if you guys want to check out any of my other pre-recorded classes, I am working on a retrograde series. I go through every single planet and go an hour and a half in detail on what that retrograde planet means in your birth chart in the transiting sky. I have Mercury, Venus, and Mars available now, which are probably the biggest three for all of you to take if you're interested. They're very affordable classes, guys. They're affiliated with my Patreon. You do not need to be a member of Patreon to purchase my classes. But I do have other classes. I have an actual course there as well, called Mapping the Soul, if anyone's interested. That's a mix of, spiritual guidance, spiritual teachings, astrology, and just a bunch of other great things. And of course, guys, just to plug one more thing, if you would like to book a reading with me, we connect via Zoom. We have an amazing time together. All my recent clients that have been booking with me, especially from some of my YouTube audience here, everyone has been, it's been such a lovely experience to connect and do readings outside of my physical world in my town, here where I live. But so yeah, feel free, go to my website, guys, links down below. Cruise, I lowered some of my rates for a few months to make them more affordable for everybody here on YouTube. So don't be shy, connect with me. But let's talk about the Saturn return, guys, because I will ramble on and on, as you know. And I want to kind of make this video a little bit shorter than my other ones. I really want to start cutting them down. I really do. I know a lot of people love how long they are, I'm sure. But for my own sake, I feel like I should be able to get to the point and explain things better. But I have no opposition to speaking for a long time. So it's whatever the universe wants to bring to the table today. But guys, the Saturn return, right? We experienced this in our late 20s. We experience it again as we're pushing 60, I believe. In the late 50s. And what do these mean? Every astrologer has a different take on it, right? Some of them have there are similar themes to a lot of Saturn returns. Some people claim it's the most catastrophic event, and and a lot of pop astrologers, really try to strike fear into their audience, and these astrologers have no idea what they're talking about. It's really sad, that's what I call it. Pop astrology is just, people who don't really dive deep into any other, metaphysical topics, or they're very surface level astrologers. They don't really study the ancient ways. They don't know psychology, because there's a lot of archetypal influence into astrology. And Saturn returns just somehow become mainstream in a way where it's like, oh my God, in your late 20s, you're going to, your life might fall apart. It's going to be the most challenging year and a half ever. And this, that, and the other thing. This is not true at all, guys. Not true. Because we go through challenges all the time. There's no difference between a Saturn return and maybe something else going on in your life, typically speaking. I would say perfection years, if any of you are familiar with that term. Perfection years is an ancient astrology tool, or kind of a method. And I'll maybe do a video on that, where every year of your life kind of highlights a house topic in your life. And there's kind of like this cyclical thing that happens throughout the entire course of your life. And I would say when you're in a 12th house year, that's probably one of the most challenging, years, when you track how the perfection years work. And I'll make a video on that so you guys understand what I'm saying. But Saturn returns, I think, are great. I think Saturn returns put a mirror to our face and say, hey, is this the life you want? Hey, is everything you've been working towards and everything that you've been doing, is this the life you want, right? Is this what you've been trying to accomplish, right? And the house topic that your Saturn is in, obviously, is really kind of like the main theme here. I feel like your Saturn returns, you were born with a Saturn placement in a particular theme, house topic in your life, that during these Saturn returns that you have in your lifetime, those are like the major pivot points where you have a chance to see if something is working or not working. And for some reason, however astrology manifests the truest, nature of it all, the reason why we're born with a certain Saturn in a certain house is because that part of our life might be a place where we struggle the most. Aside from your Chiron wound, that's a different kind of struggle. That's a sacred emotional wound, a psycho-spiritual wound, a more spiritual wound. Where the Saturn is more of a physical wound. It is like something in your life, your physical world, that just is like such a hard struggle. Like if you had Saturn in the second house, your life you might always find yourself, in a pickle and not knowing how to make money. You may always, it always may be a task for you to be financially stable. You may have issues with your self-worth throughout your life, because Saturn is kind of, making you work hard. There's a patience lesson to be learned there. There's a mature lesson to be learned there. Saturn is maturity. How are you going to grow and mature? What do you need to do in your life to really put the work in? So the second house is about self-worth and about finances, in my opinion, about resources for the self. And when Saturn's there, it restricts a lot of that stuff. So that just means you're going to have to work a little bit harder in that part of your life. And that's what Saturn really wants to teach you. Like, you're going to have to put a little bit extra elbow grease into this part of your life. You're going to have to really discipline yourself in this part of your life if you wish to, have a more stable, situation there. So your Saturn return is just a reminder, a recognition. If you're on the right path, are you putting the work in? Are you, how is that part of your life going? A Saturn return for someone in the second house might be like, hey, are you okay trying to discipline yourself around finances and resources, this, that, and the other thing? Are you putting in the discipline and the structure in your life in order to be stable in that part of your life? Or do you need to change something? Is the career path you have screwing you over right now? And are you not making the money you want? Is there something going on with finances or just the way you are operating in your life with your self-worth, involving the second house? Not that the second house has anything to do with career, but because there's money involved there, it can have an influence on what you're doing with your career. So the second house can be like, hey, are you on the right track with a career path? Like, Saturn might be patting you on the back for your Saturn return. It might be a lovely experience. You may get that new dream job. You may have a shift in your career that sets you on your way in a beautiful way due to all of the years of hard work and study and just passion maybe. Or are things collapsing and do you need to really reorg your whole life? Saturn returns do that. Now in your late 50s, that's more of like, in a way, kind of like the midlife crisis, but not really. The midlife crisis, I believe, comes around the Chiron return, actually, which I'm going to make another video on soon. The Chiron return happens 4950. And typically speaking, that's when we might have a midlife crisis, even though there might be another transit that there might be some other factors in the astrology that can dictate when a midlife crisis can come. But Saturn returns can bring crisis. They can. But usually for the Saturn return in your late 50s, again, it's a reassessment of, hey, what is going on in your life here? What structures are in place that are working or not working? Like, I know someone who went through their Saturn return in their late 50s, the second return that they've had, and they spent a decade wondering if they were still wanted to be married to their husband or not. And, that theme came around again. And, I don't know what happened now really with those people, but, the theme came up like a crisis. It was just they were having a real rough time around her Saturn return. And they were both having their Saturn return. They were both the same age. So there was a big moment there was a crisis moment. Do we stick together or do we not? Is this structure of a relationship going to work for us or not? Saturn is asking the tough questions. Saturn is showing you with the mirror the reality of your life. And for some people, that reality is awesome. Some people, Saturn is like, yeah, you're doing good. It's like the drill sergeant saying, yeah, you went through a lot, you've worked hard, and proud of you. Or drill sergeant will just not say anything, or give you a dose of reality and tell you where you're failing. So Saturn will show you where you're failing, will show you where you're succeeding, will show you, if there needs to just be a change and you don't even know the answer to that yet. But Saturn is the ultimate teacher involving how do we become mature human beings? How do we work? How do we structure? How do we discipline? And whether all humans like to hear this or not, all spiritual people like to hear this or not, most of them don't. They don't like to hear, hey, your human, experience is more important sometimes than your spiritual experience, because the spiritual part of you wanted to come to be a human, right? So Saturn just wants to remind you, like, hey, you need to still get with the program. Have you been following your goals? Have you been working on second house Saturn, for example? Have you been working on your confidence? Have you been working on your self-worth? Have you been doing the right thing involving, the way you look at money? Are you being smart with your money or not? So I hope this makes sense, guys. And I just, I'm going to stop the video there, actually. So let me know how your Saturn return experiences were, if you have anything to share, if you would like. Obviously, I could probably speak more and more and more on this. Maybe I'll make a class on this, guys, because, I am building up a library of classes. Obviously, anyone who purchases classes, that helps me in my career. Speaking of second house topics. So, I'm building up a library of classes. Most of my 90-minute classes are $25, pretty affordable in my opinion. So anyone who wants to go dive deeper into that stuff, definitely check that stuff out down below. But I'll probably make a Saturn return class. I think that's a very important class to, dive deeper in for like 90 minutes. But in the meantime, I hope this, video provided you some insight. And yes, my friends, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for being here. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you all in the next video.